So you can read all the stuff about jet lag and changing around. A lot of people think that to get over jet lag, taking small doses of melatonin can actually sometimes be useful to reset the clock. I'm skipping around a little bit next, and now we're going to go to page 319 and talk about the brain and what goes on in the brain when you're sleeping. Most specifically, how do you actually measure these different waves? And boy, having a daughter with epilepsy, I know very well about these types of devices because they look at brain waves. You do something called an EEG. Doesn't hurt at all. You put these recording electrodes on the brain in different regions, and when people go from being awake to going to sleep, they go through a whole series of different brain waves that you can actually monitor. If you turn to page 320, you can see the different phases. When you're awake, you have what's called alpha activity. Alpha activity is high frequency but low amplitude waves. You go from alpha to beta. The first few minutes when you fall asleep, you start exhibiting what's called theta activity. Theta activity is where you're just fallen asleep and the waves get a little bit higher in terms of amplitude and a little less frequent. Then you go into what's called stage 2 sleep, where you show the sharp negative waves called K complexes, and you actually also show something called sleep spindles, periods of high frequency, burst of high frequency activity. The book doesn't show that high frequency activity very well. One thing I can tell you is having the daughter of somebody or my daughter having epilepsy, you see a whole lot of high frequency bursts sometimes when people have epilepsy. So sleep spindles and K complexes. Stage 3, notice what starts happening. You start having delta waves where you get more high amplitude, low frequency waves. And finally, stage 4, often considered slow wave sleep, where the neurons are firing in synchrony. And when they fire in synchrony, then you basically have these high amplitude, low frequency waves. So you go through these particular stages when you go to sleep at night, and what seems to actually occur is after you go through stage 4, if you look at the chart next to it, you actually go back up the scale. You don't go right from stage 4 right into what we call REM sleep, but you actually go back up the scale, if you will, through 3, 2, and then you actually go into a REM stage. So those are some of the things we know. Let's see what else I want to say about REM sleep. Well, let me give you a little history here. I was doing a little digging. The person who really brought the study of sleep into the current millennium, if you will, was a guy named Dement, William Dement, D-E-M-E-N-T. Dement actually started way back in the 60s, and he was one of the first people to look at what happens if you don't let people get REM sleep, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Before his time, everybody basically believed what Freud had to say, which was dreams are the unconscious mind. Actually, I think I'll come back to this a little bit later. But it was basically Dement and the person he worked for, a gentleman by the name of Kleitman. Kleitman is K-L-E-I-T, K-L-E-I-T-M-A-N. And Kleitman was actually the person that discovered this idea of rapid eye movement, that when you go back up the stages, you get into the stage called rapid eye movement, which is also called paradoxical sleep. Because in some ways, if you look at the EEG pattern, it looks like this person's completely awake, yet they're in their most deep stage of sleep. So REM is this stage. 80% or more of dreaming occurs during REM sleep. And so we know people go through this. And if you look at the chart on 320, you can see basically what happens as the night goes on is people basically start going into more and more REM cycles as the night actually goes on. So we have that. Let's see what else I put in the little outline here for you. Pattern during the night, so more and more REM as the night goes on. What is the purpose of REM sleep? Well, it seems to really allow the person to get a good night's rest. There is some evidence that if you don't get a good night's rest with REM sleep, that memories become lost. As we get older, we have less REM sleep, less good patterns of sleeping. Let's see, next on the outline, sleep and REM deprivation. And so this is where I should have gone back and started talking about the research by Dement and Kleitman. Dement really did the first project on sleep deprivation back in 1960. And basically what he did is when people started going into REM sleep, he started to wake them up. And what he basically found is that if you keep waking people up as they go into the REM sleep stage, they will keep, the next time you let them lay down, they will try to go into REM quicker and quicker and quicker. But if you keep waking them up, and they do this at places like Stanford, where they have a very famous sleep lab, and the University of Pennsylvania, then what seems to happen is people will get more and more groggy and more agitated. By the time you're done with the study, what seems to happen is something called REM rebound, where you actually, when you are allowed to go to sleep, you go to sleep much more quickly, and then you end up going into REM much more quickly and staying there a lot longer. So sleep deprivation is a very serious area of study because, boy, there are truck accidents due to this. On 321, it kind of charts what happens to college students who are dangerously sleep deprived in many situations, and how that can really affect a lot of performance-related variables as well. So we know that. Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to add here. No, I think that's about it for this particular thing. So the functions of sleep. One of the functions of sleep, well, there are a lot of different theories, but I think the one that makes most sense, as far as I can tell, is what's called the activation synthesis model of sleep. The idea that when you're sleeping and dreaming, you basically live out your realities while you're dreaming. Let's see. I thought it was in here. Hello, book. There it is, 329. So this is a theory put forth by Hobson, that when you have these dreams, basically you interpret them in a way that makes sense with your regular life and the stimuli that are going on there in your brain. The theories really for why we sleep and dream are really not that good, quite honestly. I was hoping for better stuff when I read through this, and I remember when I used to read through this, but the theories on why we actually have to do this are not so strong, but certainly to rest and give our body rest certainly seems to be one of the main ideas. So another 7 minutes here, so we'll stop it at that point.